Sponsor.
Yes, without objection. We will now call up the substitute amendment, SIL 21C97. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The substitute amendment is adopted. Does any senator seek recognition to speak or offer an amendment? Senator Cotton.
Mr. Chairman, I will call up my amendment ALB 21I46.
Senator may proceed.
This amendment would expand the protections of this legislation, the purpose of which I strongly support. It would include all government officials, be they federal, state, local, or tribal. It would allow them to file a written request to have their home address and phone number taken down from any public-facing website. The simple truth is that prosecutors, law enforcement, and even local officials who don't deal with crime in any fashion, unfortunately, face threats from members of the public, and they shouldn't have to worry about someone showing up at their home and endangering their family. That's why this amendment and the bill on which it's based, the Public Servant Protection Act, has been endorsed by the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, the Major Cities Chiefs Association, and the National District Attorneys Association. It really doesn't matter whether it's a school board member, a member of Congress, a police officer, or a county clerk. Just in the past week, for instance, we have heard from a Democratic congresswoman who played for the press a voicemail death threat she recently received. She should have the right to have her home address taken offline if it's posted online. This amendment is also based on existing law in California that already provides these protections there to state and federal officials. We know this model works because it's already worked there, and in fact, my office, when I first started working on this bill last year, I was contacted by a former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of California who noted that California law protected his home address just as it protects state officials. So I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment, which would expand the protections of this bill from federal judges and law enforcement officers to all government officials, whether they are federal, state, local, or tribal.
Senator Booker.
Thank you. Goes without saying that Senator Cotton and I disagree on a lot of issues, but this is something he and I agree on. We are seeing rising threats against everyone from American law enforcement all the way to members of this body, and it's something that we should take seriously as a committee and should figure out ways to see if we can address it. The challenge is right now that according to the Brookings Institute, nearly 24 million people, a little over 15% of the workforce, are involved in the categories that the amendment would cover: public and national service, noble people who do local, state, and federal work to protect us. This amendment touches the equities of a wide array of stakeholders, many of whom haven't even reviewed the legislation or contributed to it on its merits. I would encourage my colleagues to not support this amendment, but to perhaps join with me in a commitment that will take up the protection of the categories that Senator Cotton is talking about and see what we can do as a committee to offer further protection at a time of rising threats of violence.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Have senators seeking recognition. Klobuchar was the first I noted, then Senator Kennedy, and I believe Senator Feinstein. Senator Klobuchar.
All right. I pledged to also work with Senator Cotton on this. I'll join Senator Booker in his vote on this important bill, but I think we have rising threats against elected officials, including in this Congress, really on both sides of the aisle that we're seeing. And I think we have to consider doing something about it because people shouldn't have them or their families at risk for serving.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cotton, as usual, has a great idea, and I think we ought to pursue it, but I think we ought to pursue it to a separate bill. I really worry. I think this bill has a pretty good chance of passing the Senate floor, and if we add to it, I think it might kill it. I also worry about the cost. We need time to investigate the cost of adding in everybody else. So that's why I'm going to oppose the amendment. But I hope this is not the last we've heard of his good idea.
Senator Feinstein? No.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to speak on the amendment, it's my understanding it would strike a finding related to statistics demonstrating the rise in threats against federal judges. It limits the definition of the original bill of personally identifiable information so that it only includes home address and home phone number and does not include other identifying information such as mobile phone numbers, personal email addresses, or license plate numbers. So it expands the range of covered officials to be so broad that it would no longer be practically enforceable by the government. So if that is correct, I will be a no vote on this amendment.
Anyone else seek recognition on the Cotton Amendment? Yes, Senator Cruz.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the author of this bill. I think this is a good and positive bill, and it's a bill that should be enacted. And I want to express our condolences to Judge Salas. What happened to you and your family is horrific. It is unimaginable, and no one should face that, whether serving as a judge or in any other capacity. And so thank you for being here, and thank you for serving. I think it's important that we enhance the protections for those engaged in public service who do so at risk to their own lives and their own families. I do think Senator Cotton's amendment is a good and positive step forward. As we all know, there are many others engaged in public service who also have significant threats, particularly those involved in law enforcement, those who are prosecutors, police officers. I can't think of another time on this committee when Senator Cotton and I have together joined forces to urge this committee to adopt California law. I don't know that that will happen again, but if the people of California thought this was an appropriate way to protect officials in that state, I think that goes a long way to answering whether it's administrable. California is nothing if not large and populous, and if it can work there, I would suggest it can work most other places as well. So I would encourage support of Senator Cotton's amendment, but I would also encourage support of Senator Booker's bill, which I think is a good and important bill.
Senator Cotton.
Just to respond to Senator Feinstein's comments, this amendment does not strike any findings. I believe you're referring to another amendment. It does focus on home numbers and addresses, which are the core public safety concern, and that is consistent with the California law.
Senator, if no one else seeks recognition on the amendment, there's been a suggestion made that a separate bill move forward, and I would just say that we would certainly, this committee would give the highest priority to such an effort, but the decision is yours on this amendment.
Can we move forward with the vote?
Certainly.
I think I know what the outcome is going to be, but I'd like to see to whom we should be speaking.
Okay, unless someone seeks recognition, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the Cotton Amendment, ALB 21146. I believe that's what it is.
Mr. Leahy? No. Mrs. Feinstein? No. Mr. Whitehouse? No. Ms. Klobuchar? No. Mr. Coons? No. Mr. Blumenthal? No. Ms. Hirono? No. Mr. Booker?
No.
Mr. Padilla?
No.
Mr. Ossoff?
No.
Mr. Grassley?
Aye.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Cornyn?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cruz? Aye. Mr. Sass?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Hawley?
Aye.
Mr. Cotton?
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy?
No.
Mr. Tillis?
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn?
Aye by proxy.
Chair Durbin?
No.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 9 yeas, 13 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. I will renew the statement I made earlier. If Senator Cotton wants to pursue this on a bipartisan basis, I hope he'll join Senator Booker and others in that effort. Senator Padilla, do you seek recognition?